Hey everyone, buckle up because today we're diving into the world of fusion energy and a company that's making waves, Helion Energy.
They're claiming they can get commercial fusion power up and running by 2028.
Years ahead of those massive government projects.
Now that's ambitious.
Especially when you consider fusion power has always felt a bit like a distant dream, right?
Limitless clean energy, no greenhouse gases, no long-lived radioactive waste. It almost sounds too good to be true.
Right, and it's attracted some serious attention. Helion's managed to raise over $500 million in funding.
Clearly, some big players are taking their 2028 goal very seriously.
So what's got everyone buzzing?
Helion plans to deliver a 50 milliW fusion generator to Microsoft by 2028.
But how? What's different about their tech?
Most of us picture those giant donut-shaped tokamaks when we think fusion, right?
Exactly.
Helion's going for something completely different.
Their prototype, Trenta, is this 180-centimeter wide, 12-meter long device that looks more like, well, a giant dumbbell. A giant dumbbell smashing atoms together. Okay, I'm intrigued, but how does that even work?
It uses magnetic fields to smash plasma together at mind-boggling speeds. We're talking 1,000,000 miles per hour to achieve fusion.
But the really fascinating part is what they claim to do next.
They say they can directly capture the energy created during fusion, bypassing the need for those inefficient steam turbines found in traditional power plants.
So wait, they're claiming a faster, potentially more efficient way to get fusion power to the grid than anyone else.
That's a bold claim.
Are there any other examples of this direct energy capture actually working?
That's the million-dollar question.
It's a very new approach. And while grounded in physics, scaling it up to a commercially viable level is a whole other challenge.
That's where the skepticism comes in.
Makes sense. So it's not just about whether fusion is possible, but if Helion's way of doing it is feasible. Which brings us to those YouTubers you mentioned, Real Engineering and Improbable Matter.
They've raised some interesting points about Helion's claims.
What are their biggest concerns?
Both YouTubers highlight a few key things.
First, Helion's choice of fuel is a bit unconventional.
They're using a deuterium-helium-3 mix, which is actually less reactive than the deuterium-tritium mix used by most other fusion projects.
Okay, hold on. Why is reactivity so crucial for achieving fusion?
And why would Helion choose a less reactive fuel?
Good questions.
Reactivity basically measures how easily two nuclei will fuse.
The more reactive your fuel mix, the easier it is to achieve fusion, and the less energy you need to put in to get more energy out.
It's about achieving that coveted net energy gain where your fusion reaction produces more energy than it consumes. So Helion has their work cut out for them with this less reactive fuel.
They'd need incredibly precise and powerful technology to make it work.
Are there other issues that Real Engineering and Improbable Matter bring up?
There are. And this next one is a big one, neutron production.
Remember how we talked about fusion being clean? Well, while the deuterium-helium-3 reaction itself doesn't directly produce radioactive waste, there's a catch.
Helion's setup still uses deuterium, and when those nuclei fuse, they release neutrons.
And neutrons are troublemakers. They're highly penetrating and can make other materials radioactive.
Ah, I see.
So even though their chosen reaction is considered cleaner, there's still a risk of radiation due to those pesky neutrons.
That definitely adds another layer of complexity to their claims.
Right, and this is where Helion's design starts raising eyebrows.
You see, most fusion reactors have about 1 meter of dense shielding around them to contain any stray neutrons and protect people and the environment from radiation.
Helion's design doesn't account for that level of shielding.
Wow. Okay, so now we've got less reactive fuel, the neutron issue, and potential shielding concerns. I'm starting to see why those YouTubers are a bit skeptical. So it sounds like safety is a big question mark hanging over Helion's design.
Right.
But weren't we talking about efficiency too?
Yeah.
They're claiming to bypass the whole steam turbine thing with their direct energy capture system.
Right.
How does that even work?
Well,
And is it really more efficient?
So Helion's idea is to capture the energy from those fast-moving charged particles created during fusion and convert it directly into electricity. Sounds great in theory,
Right.
but there's a fundamental physics problem they need to overcome, something called Bremsstrahlung radiation.
Okay.
Basically, when you accelerate charged particles, like they do in their dumbbell-shaped reactor, those particles lose energy by emitting radiation. This energy loss can significantly impact efficiency,
Right.
potentially making it difficult to achieve that all-important net energy gain.
Okay, so they need to produce more energy than they lose to this bremsstrahlung radiation.
Right.
But is that even possible?
Well, that's the thing.
I mean, we're talking about established physics here.
Exactly. And that's what makes Helion's claims so controversial. They're basically saying their plasma will behave differently than predicted, allowing them to sidestep these energy losses.
Wow.
Many scientists are skeptical, to say the least.
Right.
To convince the scientific community, Helion needs to back up those claims with some rock-solid evidence.
Right. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, we found a way to make perpetual motion work.
Yeah.
And everyone's understandably a little wary.
That's a good analogy. But remember, the YouTubers we mentioned, while raising concerns, agreed that Helion's tech is rooted in real physics.
Okay.
The challenge lies in scaling it up and proving those efficiency claims.
Right.
It's one thing to demonstrate these concepts in a lab, but quite another to build a commercially viable power plant around them.
It's feeling like a pattern here. Ambitious goals, intriguing tech, but those real-world hurdles keep popping up.
Right.
So we've heard from these YouTubers, but what about experts in the nuclear field? What do they think about Helion's approach?
Well, there's a nuclear engineer who runs the YouTube channel T-Folse Nuclear.
Okay.
He took a deep dive into Helion's claims, and his initial interest gave way to some serious skepticism.
Interesting.
It's interesting because Folse shares many of the same concerns raised by real engineering and improbable matter.
Okay.
He's particularly worried about the low power output projected for Helion's reactor and the questionable efficiency of their plasma to electricity conversion.
So even with those innovative ideas, the actual energy output might not be enough to make a real difference.
That's one of the big questions, and Folse doesn't seem convinced.
Okay.
He also brings up those neutron shielding concerns again, pointing out that Helion doesn't seem to have a good answer for that yet.
Right, we can't just gloss over the safety aspect.
Right.
Especially if they're serious about building commercial power plants.
Exactly.
What else did this nuclear engineer find concerning?
One of his biggest takeaways is the sheer difference in energy released per reaction when comparing Helion's fusion process with traditional nuclear fission. Fission, for all its complexities and downsides, is a remarkably energy-dense process.
Yeah.
Helion's going to need to demonstrate that their fusion approach can even come close to that level of energy output.
So even if they solve the efficiency problems, they've got to compete with existing energy sources on a practical level.
It's a multifaceted challenge for sure. It's not enough for Helion to just make fusion work. They need to make it work better than the alternatives if they want to revolutionize the energy sector.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around. We've got these grand visions of limitless clean energy, but the closer we look, the more we see those practical realities and engineering roadblocks. We're approaching the end of part 2 of our deep dive. Before we get to the big picture, what are your thoughts so far? What stood out to you? Okay, let's connect the dots here. Helion has this 2028 target in their sights. Which seems incredibly ambitious given all the hurdles we've uncovered.
Right.
What are your final thoughts on whether they can actually pull this off?
Well, it's the classic story of ambition versus reality, isn't it?
Yeah.
Helion's vision is certainly exciting, and they've made progress in their experiments.
Right.
But going from a lab setting to a commercially viable power plant is a monumental leap.
Right.
Especially on that timeline. We're talking about solving complex engineering problems, managing extreme conditions, and meeting stringent safety regulations, all while proving their technology can actually deliver on its promise of net energy gain.
So it's not just about if fusion is possible. It's about how Helion's specific approach stacks up against those real-world challenges.
Right.
It's all well and good to have a cool new idea, but can they actually make it work? I mean, we're talking about revolutionizing the energy sector, not just building a fancy new gadget.
Precisely. Helion needs to show they can not only overcome the technical challenges, but also meet the demanding requirements for commercialization. They're not just competing with other fusion projects, they're competing with existing energy infrastructure.
Right.
And that means proving their technology is not only feasible, but also cost-effective and reliable on a scale that can meet global energy demands.
That's a lot of pressure for a company making some pretty bold claims.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's certainly going to take a whole lot more than just a cool new fusion reactor.
Exactly. It's not just about the science. It's about the engineering, the logistics, the economics, and the public perception of the technology.
Right.
Fusion has always been tantalizingly close, yet frustratingly far away.
Yeah.
Helion's attempt to push the boundaries of that timeline is certainly ambitious and maybe even a little daring.
Right.
But it's going to be a long and winding road to get there.
Right. And it's not just Helion's future at stake here. If they succeed in achieving their goals, it could mean a monumental shift in how we power our world.
Right.
But if they falter, it might set back fusion research and development by years.
Which is why it's so important to approach this with a balanced perspective. We need to acknowledge both the potential rewards and the significant risks involved. It's not just a scientific pursuit, it's a societal one.
You're right. And that's why we're having this deep dive to explore the complexities, the uncertainties, and the potential impact of this ambitious endeavor. So, deep divers, there you have it, our exploration into Helion Energy. We've delved into their unique approach, the challenges they face, and the potential consequences for the future of clean energy. Now we want to hear from you. If you had the chance to invest in Helion, knowing the potential rewards and risks, would you take the gamble? Is Helion a spark of hope in a world desperate for clean energy, or just another flash in the pan? What do you think?